Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Stage. I am your host, Ricia Paul, and today we are, I am actually sitting down today with my boss and my regular co host, Mr. John Arnold. He is the executive coordinator of Shopa Complex, and he is the individual that would have been a part of this project from the very inception. Mr. Arnold, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Lucia, and of course, to all our viewers, regular viewers, and those who are new, good morning. And it's a privilege, as usual, to share everything there is to know about Chopper Complex, a brainchild of the Tobago House of Assembly, and certainly one of the iconic buildings that we have here and operations on the island.
Mr. Arnold, I want to just sort of break the ice a bit and start the interview with a bit of humor by debunking some myths. So,
Uh-huh.
first question. Is it true that Shopa Complex was built for John Arnold? I feel like I have
No, no, no.
I feel like I have heard that so many times.
Oh my
Was it
God.
built simply for
I
you?
think no, no. I mean, these are easy to debunk. I mean, that is such a silly thing. I think we live on an island with all kinds of people, and people say things. There were even people in the media who were referring to it as the John Arnold Performing Academy, JAPA. I mean, there have been all kinds of stories, and I mean, they've been humorous to say the least, because I've always just been committed to Ireland and committed as a real patriot to Tobago and the development of Tobago. Actually, when I left university, I had several options to work in Trinidad. At that time, there were places like Iscot. I actually had an offer to work at Iscot in those days. I also had another offer to work in foreign affairs, working with the UN. And all those, I mean, those were parts that were there, the parts were there. But I wanted to come back to Tobago. And I've always I mean, feel proud that I've come back here. My sisters tried to get me to go and live in the States, but I've always believed in Tobago, and I've given a lot for Tobago. I mean, and I will give, I guess, until I die. People like me, I guess, they're soldiers in Tobago. We don't soldier because we need somebody to recognize it. But I think people, our work will be recognized later on.
Okay, if there's one thing that I have to say, even when I was speaking with my predecessor, Maurice Nances, we had the same experience where before we got to Showpack, you would have heard all of the John Arnold stories and everyone just making it seem like, oh my goodness, you need to be on your P's and Q's because he's so terrible. And that has not been my experience. That was not her experience. So that is another
Okay.
myth to debunk
Yeah,
Tobago,
well,
Trinidad, and the world.
I think
So.
I'll tell you a story that really I never forgot it, because a division wanted someone to help, for example, to teach a choral, to teach a song for them to sing as a choir. And the name that came out, of course, was my name. And then several other names came, and then somebody said, listen, that guy is as serious as it comes. If you all are not serious and you all are serious about what you want to do, he won't be the best person to call. And actually, when they told me the story, I told them that's the best story you could ever tell me, because I like the idea that before you consider, people think that competence, disciplinarian, trying to get things really done well, they take that as arrogance, they take it as people full of themselves, they take it as all kinds of stuff. But I have long seen that discipline is really related to success. And all the success that I've had, it has come from discipline. You have to be disciplined. I mean, you can't get it any other way. And so, in a land where mediocrity sometimes is, it's people's salvation, it certainly is of mine. That becomes a problem when people operate above that kind of thing and above the fray. People's business, I have no interest in it. But I'm really about work and competencies. So there are loads of stories. We will live with that. That's how history is like that.
Well, I was honestly very surprised to see that you were just so. I couldn't, like, I was very, very confused as to why people have that perception because I feel like the experience that I've had is the complete opposite. But let us get into Shore Park. You would have been at Shore Park from the inception, from when the old structure was still standing and it was about to be demolished and all
Yeah.
of the planning. Can you tell us about what that whole process was like?
Yeah, I'm glad we're doing this because I think sometimes we forget the history of things that happened in Tobago. And so it's important that we document. I'm glad these series are happening so that even beyond when we go to the other side, these stories can be told and documented. Shopard, when the old Shopard was broken down, and the decision by the THA to build a brand new building, I know there were several stakeholder meetings with practitioners in the field, mass choirs, choral movement, dancers, everybody, um, village councils, everybody. And the way that the instructions that went to the architect really were very clear that we needed a structure. The thinking I know of the then chief secretary was that, hey, if we're gonna build something, we might as well build it one time for the future. Yes, we have 60,000 people, putting up a structure to hold 3,700 plus an additional set of rooms that takes our maximum capacity up to 5,000. It's really a decision that had to be based on some kind of philosophy. And I think the philosophy was that Tobago is not going to be the same always, but if we get in this chance to build a performing arts center, let's do that. The second consideration was we needed to build a place that would not be fixed, meaning not a fixed stage so that there was nothing else you can do. So that was another idea that came up there. The tall doors you see behind, that also came up in the consultations. Big mass costumes to come in. There were going to be shows. You remember in the old shop we had where you had um, what they call, my gosh, after the March Gras, you had the best of everybody will come again. And we had that show maybe once or twice in Tobago. So the thinking was if you were to bring a Tantan to Tobago, you need to have the space for that to come in. So when Shaw Park was envisaged, and I must thank the architect Alvin Dorset, we have to recognize those persons because I think he took into consideration all the terms of reference in terms of what was collected from from the stakeholders and the practitioners as to what would be the best way to make a venue for the creatives. And that's how Shaw Park started. A committee was formed called the Shaw Park Commissioning Committee. And I remember we used to meet in an old container at Shaw Park, even when mud and just the foundation was there. We used to have our meetings there frequently. And so we were always on site to watch the progress. I remember also when they were putting in the piles, let us say this was the amount estimated when they realized no, to really have this sturdy, more piles were called upon to put down. So in the earlies, that was how it happened. In the earlies, we had a wonderful committee mix of THA, private. We had also from Culture Division, and also practitioners in the field. I think it was maybe around 8 or I can't remember the exact number. But that committee we used to meet regularly and really provide guidance. one intervention I have to talk about, and that's when we bought in a company called Arup, ARUP, and this was to look. Arup is really a company that did several things away. They were responsible for building stadiums, theaters all over the world. And we brought two of their consultants in to look at what was built so far and to give us some guidance. And that was instructive because they gave us a massive dossier, which we then were able to give the NIPTEC, the builders and so on, to look at in terms of tweaking and doing things to certainly make the facility what it is today. That was a very serious intervention by Arup. And I know it increased the cost in some areas, but not significantly. And we're really glad that today we have Shore Park Complex, or some people say Shore Park Cultural Complex.
So the ultimate decision to open the complex in
Yeah,
2015, that was done by
yeah.
the commissioning committee.
Yes. Well, remember the commissioning committee reported to the THA.
Okay.
The past chief sec over in London, the one before Mr. Kelvin Charles,
Mhm.
he was responsible for that committee. As a matter of fact, the committee that reported directly to him and the Tobago House of Assembly. And several times during that their tenure, we had to do presentations, PowerPoint presentations, to describe what we saw as. First, we had to do planning for when the facility is finished, what we're going to do with it. Then we had to do some direction, and then obviously we had to do some coordination and certainly come up with an action plan. So we had several of those that were submitted in terms of the direction. Now, the building was going for years, and various problems, kept coming up, and we had to deal with them. And um, I won't talk about those. That could take us 2 days. But we we have to give credit to some people. I think I want to say credit to former Secretary for Culture, which was St. Alfred, played a very pivotal role in the early days, and Mr. Hilton Sandy. He also played a very strong and pivotal role in the early days of Shore Park Complex. And I'm only saying these things because they have to be recorded as part of the history. Um, Shore Park, we decided to open in 2015 as what we will call a soft opening. So there were parts that weren't finished, but we moved to push so that those parts that were finished we can use. So the chiller plant was ready, so we had AC. Downstairs was all right. Some of the rooms were not finished. Some of the corridors weren't finished upstairs. Actually, when I moved in. I just had a staff of two, which was just myself and a young lady, Maxine um, Wilson, I think. I think so. Yeah,
Yes.
I know Maxine Gonzalez, Maxine Wilson. Yeah, so we were in the opening batch that came in there working strongly with NIPDET. NIPDET was still on site.
Okay.
Yeah, they were still on site in the container, but so I liaised a lot with them, and we had a lot of collaboration. And of course, there were also difficult parts, things that weren't running, but we were able to sort that out, I think, by certainly communicating and trying to deal with the problem. So the decision in 2015 was that we started. We had to start. So
And that the
I
first
wasn't.
event was the service that you would have had in February, I believe.
Yes, 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 correct. And the first thing was to thank God and to get all the religions. So I had to put on my event coordinator hat for that. As the chief asked me to coordinate that part of it. And we got a really, really nice turnout. Because here we were telling everybody, come see what your bag is. And I would tell you this, the comments after that show, I remember people coming to me and literally shaking my hand and saying, "Don't worry, boy," because all the other stories were going on the media, right? Um, and that's one of the things about leadership and responsibility, taking ownership and being accountable, that you can hear all that and still focus on what you have to do. And there were people who came after that and said, hey, this is so great. They were proud. I think people were proud that this was happening finally for Tobago. Because a number of the places they would not have seen the unfinished parts on the third floor and so on. But I think because they were able to come downstairs and see the amenities, and it was just great. The sound system was not functional at that time, so we had to bring in a sound system for that event. But all in all, that's how we got things off the ground, and that then forced the contractors to move even more hastily to finish the facility. So the
Was
first two
there
years were yeah,
was
first two
there
years were
ever not to cut you across, but that
no.
same month, I think it would have been then or in March, was there any pressure to consider adjusting the rules when there was the outcry about the no eating
Oh yeah,
rules
yeah,
and
yeah.
all
That
of
was a
that?
big.
Yeah,
Oh
I
boy, I got.
recall. Yeah, I think that
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah. That was
Tobago
plenty links.
remembers that.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, my own experience having traveled with my choir and personally, we've seen, I mean, so many performing arts centers all over the world. And I mean, when you talk, because part of what I do is try to talk a lot to persons to understand how they operate the facilities. And I mean, that's like standard benchmark, eat inside the auditorium. The places you go outside to eat. And so that early thought, I remember once there was a thinking that, hey, the thing was, hey, Tobago cultures, people like to drink. And then I remember the chief said, making a very strong point to me, John, I really agree with you because once you open that door, you can't close it. Meaning, if we were to just start it, then you have a problem. Um, Also, I remember one year, in Queen's Hall, under one administration, there was a thinking, hey, open the facility for the people, right? Let the people from the hills come down and we want West Village, people drink. And I've been honest with you, when they saw what had happened in that 1 week, which was given freedom, the rules had to change back because it was just not in keeping with good theater practice, how you keep a hall tidy, how you keep. And I mean, let's be honest, Ricia, um, that kind of discipline we have to continue to have. And now patrons come and they say, Mr. Arnold, thank you. And I know they thank everybody for really having a place that has maintained that. I mean, can you imagine if you come to Shawback and saw rats and cockroaches running around while you
That
are
would be
watching
another
a show,
story.
then that would be another kind of story which we wouldn't. The people will take out the phone and actually take a picture of Brother Mouse running across the carpeted floor, right? So it is one of those things. In the earlies, we took plenty licks. What John Arnold think it is, this way he plays. Yeah, so we know how that story went. And again, in Tobago, people personalize things. As soon as you become professional, they personalize it. And that's part of the way we live. Um, it's not one of the things I accept. And certainly I will continue to work, as I say, in a very professional manner. But I'm glad that that rule held its own, and it's still a rule now that everybody know that when they come to shop out, you want
Nobody's
to
gonna
eat, there's
drink.
an area to go and eat. Go out there and eat. And I think it works pretty smoothly. The chewing gum is still a problem, and that we have to consistently, persistently, and obviously we have to insist on persons, please do not chew in the hall. We don't stick the chewing gum. I mean, I'll tell you, and I could say it here. We have found, even one occasion, I found somebody brought in a bottle and actually had time to go behind the separating curtain and actually urinate in the bottle and leave the bottle on the ground, you know? So when you have those kinds of instances, people who bring in preserved mango, right? They eat the mango and they drop the mango on the ground, and then you have to deal with cleaning that up before the ants get there and so on. But we have to understand their standards. And the only way we can maintain standards is to consistently impress on patrons why we are keeping a place. Not even so much for us, but for the next set of persons that are going to come. Sustainable development is the next generation and the next generation, you know?
So moving from 2015, Showpark has opened. You all are bustling. You're having events, and things are really going well. And then COVID-19.
Yeah, yeah. So I think what's important to talk about the three things. One, I think, is the fact that when the Chopin Commissioning Committee, there were four pillars that we operated on. And the four pillars were business from the perspective of conference, exhibition, conventions, and so on. So we had that. Um, the second one we had was the issue of cultural development, cultural expression, performances, capacity building in that regard. Um, the third pillar was education, where we were looking at um, performing arts in terms of music and those areas that apply to Tobago. Critical, which would be the rhythm section, bass, guitar, drums, piano, and so on. And of course, we looked at the djembe and all the percussive elements that come with that. Then we had the idea about a dance floor, two dance rooms that can help with the, again, developing. So that was on the education side. We even had the idea in the recommendations for a recording studio, because that you need to have for those on the island who are going to be producing music for the distribution and to do the thing, to do the production of music at a very high standard, which becomes global. Coming out of that, of course, we looked at how we developed the tambourine and how tambourine music can fuse and all that as part of the export item, export thrust. So we had those three. And the fourth pillar, which was a pillar which was theirs, which was sport. So sport was there because we did have a floor, and the idea was to have that in keeping with the fact that until we have an indoor sporting complex, Shopper will fill the breach. Now, the thing is, by the time we started operating, we realized from scheduling to schedule one, we realized we could not facilitate regular sports. So a season of netball, a season of basketball can't run because we need a hall to do many other events. So the idea was, can we encourage sporting events that are special? For example, can we invite the Lakers versus Celtics at training camp to come here as an event that we now prepare for that event? Uh, the Celtics versus Lakers, and now you have this big, massive event that will now draw a crowd, and we use that for event tourism as from sport. So it was never envisaged to deal from the committee as regular sport, because there was no way you could have run regular sport and also all the other activities. But beyond that, because we have a mobile stage, you realize moving from one event to the other, we have to retweak the stage, sometimes rebuild it, and so on. And that normally takes another day or two. And so scheduling for events is critical for us, right? The way we operate. And so we were really glad that the THA, I mean, it has always been their plan, but when we heard that there's now the start turning for the indoor complex, that was good because I thought that the sporting community and sport tourism is so critical. But in terms of the venue, because we had so many events happening, um, and taking up most of the planning time. And then remember, we wanted to expand it back. So now we have many other things that are coming on board that will certainly expand the use of Shore Park, the Public Service Academy, the University of Tobago, UTT, and the development of the cultural wing in the back and so on. So there are several things, in the pipeline that will certainly maximize some of the other uses apart from what we have, which are the cultural, business, convention, the mice market, and the other. The other thing I have to talk here is the beauty about having comfort in suites um, set set
Next
up
door.
next to us, right? Because now, as you know, we've been having those discussions with them to talk about collaboration in terms of looking at the future for small meetings and small conventions and so on, that we can look at packages that look at bringing together what they do and what we do and how we can certainly collaborate. Yeah.
Did
Right.
you
So
want to
yeah, go
go?
ahead.
I know that there are lists of things that we wanted to cover this morning, and we're running out of time.
Hmm. Yeah.
In terms of, do you have like any like general statement that you want to make about it? I mean, there is no secret that we have had
No.
challenges at Shore Park, and then we're still
Yes, the
coming into
COVID.
COVID-19 and all of
Correct.
that. Hmm.
COVID has changed the face of events all over the world. That's a global thing. And because I'm involved in so many of the other sectors, music, TT, and cut, and so on, we've had to face this, I mean, right on. So at Showbag, it's no different. We actually have a collective between myself, the manager of Naparima, and the manager of Queenswall. They are actually my personal friends, but we actually have a collective looking at ways of how we can certainly share at this time what we all do and how we're approaching it. We, as you know, have been doing these programs and trying to educate and raise the awareness and visibility of Shore Park in preparation for when we are out of COVID, makes life a little more smoother. More persons will now certainly be creating events, productions, and we hope that they can come on board and so on. So I think for us, it's a wonderful opportunity what we're doing. And I want to thank you a lot for the effort that you have made and since we've gotten this software to really make use of it. And the throwback series behind the stage and the
Tobago Grassroots Talents.
grassroots. Yeah. So that I think those and we have many more to come, I'm sure, because our brains always just thinking and cooking and cracking. My other thing about the art exhibition, I didn't get to talk a lot about that, but that's critical to Chopin, the Tobago Art Collection, which was opened several years ago. Dr. James Armstrong as the curator then. But I think those augur well for how we can use Shore Park as an iconic building for visits, just like how we go to see buildings outside. So we have a tourism element to that. And then we have the cultural, the education, and the business side of that in terms of trying to attract conventions and so on. Lastly, because I know we're running out of time, I have actually gone to three trade shows, Comfex and IMEX. And I think Coris has been with me once or twice, can't remember the amount. But we have two main things in Tobago that are going to be challenges when we go to these. It's not the facility. They love the facility. They love our presentations. The biggest problem is branded hotels, so that business is really about branded hotels. Branded hotels because they don't have time to do research, and that has been a challenge every time we go to them, because we have a nice that is one, and the second one is hospital medical care. We have a hospital 3 minutes from us, so that's great. But I think the coming of Comfort Inn will certainly augur well for what we want to do in the future. And as I said, the more all the agencies aligned, TTAL, Division of Culture, Tourism, Festival Commission, Shopper Complex, whatever, there needs to be a synergy between all of them as we create policy and create a direction for how we move the creative and arts and culture in Tobago.
Okay, great. This was a lot of information. I know that when we have Corey's on for all our viewers, the behind the
Yeah,
scenes series, we will be speaking with the former marketing, the original marketing coordinator, Mrs. Corey's Nances, because she would have been with Mr. Arnold building Showpack from the ground
yeah.
up until her departure. So we would get more into the art collection and all of that as we go along. Miss Arnold, thank you so much for your time. I know that you have to go. I know that you're in a million meetings. Thank you to our
Yeah,
viewers.
yeah.
You can be sure
Yeah.
to like, follow, and to subscribe to all of our social media accounts. Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you've not seen the first episode of the Typical Grassroots Talent, you could view that on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. And of course, if it is that you're interested in being a part, you can still register. The forms are on all of our social media. Thank you so much to all of our viewers. Till next time, when we take you behind the stage, enlightening you about all things Shopper Complex related.
Bye bye.